Hello everyone, in this video we're going to talk about how to implement a free paperless OCR using only Excel and your scanner. Now we're just going to go through some assumptions, disclaimers, and benefits. In the part 2 of this round of videos we're going to talk about implementation, mechanics, and did we get what we expected, or validation. And afterwards we're going to also convey retrieval, so how do we get the files out of the cabinet, or how do we look for them. Obviously, we're not going to go into the cultural or timeline suggestions or implementation, as every company is going to be a little bit different. We're just going to be looking through the mechanics. So with that, let's get started on the assumptions. First section we're going to cover is that we'll need a control log. And it doesn't really work well if you do not have a control log or a table, as we can see here. In this case, we're going to be using tracking and universal product code. So as you can see here, I got my brother some shoes, and with those shoes, I sent them over to my folks' house. And let's say if I was a large company, I would be trying to, I already had the tracking numbers here, and I had the universal product codes. And so the idea would be, how can we look by taking all this data, how do I know that all this information that's the universal product code also exists in this PDF document here that I just received in paper format. And it's going to I'm going to need to make sure that all the data that I have in here, which I'm expecting to get, is going to be in this PDF. It doesn't work very well if you do not have one of these. There's ways that we can work around this. Again, if you have any suggestions, comments, or concerns, leave a like or description below. The second piece is that you need a scanner with a OCR capable scanner with a feeder. Now, what I didn't know is that when I first started doing this was that the scanner that we already had a OCR capability, or optical character recognition capability. And you'll know if your scanner has this either by, we'll have another video that will look into it, or you can buy a new scanner, or if you go through a PDF that you just scanned, and you can see that you can highlight it. So you can go to the bottom, and you'll see usually page 1 of 1, and you'll just try and move it up. You have to click, and then move. Then you'll notice that it can read it. And this works for all different languages as long as the control log matches what we have in the PDF. My suggestion would now be to try this only with accounts receivable, as usually accounts receivable only has to retrieve 20, 30, or 40 different sales orders or purchase orders that are within their cabinets. Usually they have hundreds, if not tens of thousands of documents that they put in paper cabinets, and they only retrieve 20, 30, maybe let's say 100 during the course of the year. We would prefer having large text if you have control over how your sales orders or purchase orders are written. Again, these numbers would work well with the OCR system, whereas this UPC, as we mentioned earlier, would not work as well. Obviously, with the universal product codes, the desire was to make it as small as possible to show the audience that the system works with something that is small in addition to something that is large. However, if you have control over it, make it larger. You don't want to give yourself any more headache. Same goes with your dots per inch. You really want to try to have a large DPI. And what I mean by that is 300. Don't go more than 300. 200 will work fine, which is what we did here with this. Obviously, you can tell that it's harder to see some of the gray area, and you want to have it be black and white if possible. The last piece is you want to make sure that anything that you look into, let's say
you have the capability of clicking on the search documents, putting a UPC, any one of the UPC, and then ensuring that when you click this go button, it actually looks through these documents. And
we will also have an example where we use Google Docs, or the equivalent of Google Docs, to show you how you'll be able to search for the documentation. However, most companies will use the file mangler, so you want to make sure that either your IT staff or you can turn this piece on. We'll go on how to turn it on just for you. However, Usually this is an IT function, so that is um, what you will have to rely on. And the last piece is going to be that you're going to want redundancy. And what I mean by that is usually AR documentation is going to have a shipping documentation, a purchase order of some sort, and an invoice is going to come in with that later. In this case, if you can have that shipping documentation where you have a pick ticket, a packing slip, and a bill of lading, that is really helpful as a lot of those sales orders will be in 3 different locations. And if you have the capability of making sure that usually whoever gives you that documentation is sorted, this is a lot easier than if you go ahead and the paper is all over the place and you have to find a needle in a haystack. It can still do it, however, it'll be a little more challenging. Speaking of shipping documentation, this system works very well if it's local. However, it also works extraordinarily well if it's remote. So if you have multiple shipping sites, they have to scan you information and they usually give it to you in a PDF. You can easily print all of this out and rescan it with your OCR reader. However, we will also go in and show you if you have multiple different sites on how they can go ahead and they can use their own OCR reader to scan it and send it to you, and then you can save the duplication of effort by printing off everything and then rescanning it in just so you can scan OCR, so it's much easier for you to do. Now that we've gotten through a couple disclaimers, the benefits. This requires very little IT input or skill. Again, since we'll have all the formulas needed in this entire document, which we will share with you, and of course we'll share the PDF. Again, you can also use existing hard and software. This becomes extraordinarily valuable if you are in a large company. You do not have the flexibility of implementing new IT software, or the IT department is going to be very concerned, as they should be, that there could be any outside leaks or that you will have issues developing a new piece of technology, especially if that technology was reliant on another company. They will have concerns over the security of that company, especially in today's world where everyone is trying to get other people's data. Obviously, your metadata is going to be very important, so you're probably not going to want to get it into someone else's hands, taking on that risk. The accuracy of the software is incredible, especially if you use 2 different examples. So for example, on this side, we would use the purchase order or tracking number. On this side, we would use the universal product code or shipping order. If you have 2 bits of information, this is much more accurate, and we'll go into some of the pitfalls if you only have one column that you can use. With one column, if it's all together or if there's a certain combination of words or letters, the accuracy could get up to about 90%. If you have 2 columns, it's very difficult for the accuracy not to be 99.9, if not 99.299 or 2 nines. There's very little staff training requirement if you do this, primarily because there's already using existing software, already existing hardware. The last piece is speed, and speed is very important because this is going to be faster, or is usually faster. We stress this with about 10 to 30,000 entries. We've noticed that the upper maximum of the number of characters that you can get is about 100 pages, 100 to 200 pages, which is much faster than someone trying to sort those pages on their own. And we noticed that when you use the scanner to scan all of those pages, it'll go through much faster to your email or to the folder than if you're trying to use a different OCR scanner tool that is out there. And when I mean a different OCR tool that is out there, I mean any OCR tool that costs less than $100 per user.